Bring to us your poetry from inspiration sought. Come join us with your images, your verses, words, and thought. From here we'll share your balladry with those who do not know it. This platform's here for you to show the world that you're the poet.
Welcome to episode 5 of You're the Poet, the poetry podcast featuring you. I'm host Matt Bergio, and I'm here with co-host Phil Bergio. Phil, welcome.
Thank you.
Here at You're the Poet, our purpose is to share our love of poetry with the world and to invite you to do the same. If you've written any poetry and you want to share it here, whether you just have an interest in poetry, consider yourself an amateur poet, or are a professional poet with published works, contact us to be a guest on a future episode. Please check out the website at you'rethepoet.com. There's a section there that answers questions about being a guest. Follow us on Facebook for updates and info, and send us an email to host@you'rethepoet.com for feedback or questions about the podcast and how to be our next guest. Our featured guest for this episode of You're the Poet is Brett Elridge. Brett, welcome.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing all right. We're glad you could join us, and we look forward to your contribution to the episode. To start things off, I'm going to share a classic poem for the episode. Today I'm sharing a Charles Dickens piece called Lucy's Song from the libretto of the comic opera The Village Coquettes. I had only known Dickens for A Christmas Carol until I saw this poem or a part of this poem on Facebook, and I looked it up. I discovered a free Kindle version of the book, The Poems and Verses of Charles Dickens, which included this work, along with the rest of the pieces from the libretto. And in reading this book, I developed a new fondness and intrigue for Dickens. The Village Coquettes, described on the title page of the printed copies as a comic opera in 2 acts, was played for the first time on December 6, 1836. In his preface to the play, Dickens explained that the libretto of an opera must be, to a certain extent, a mere vehicle for the music, and that it is scarcely fair or reasonable to judge it by those strict rules of criticism which would be justly applicable to a 5-act tragedy or a finished comedy. So he kind of gives a little intro to that in terms of like, hey, don't judge it too harshly. It's supposed to go more along with the music for an opera. But anyway, this is Lucy's song. Love is not a feeling to pass away like the balmy breath of a summer day. It is not, it cannot be laid aside. It is not a thing to forget or hide. It clings to the heart, ah, woe is me, as the ivy clings to the old oak tree. Love is not a passion of earthly mold, as a thirst for honor or fame or gold. For when all these wishes have died away, the deep, strong love of a brighter day, though nourished in secret, consumes the more, as the slow rust eats to the iron's core. Charles Dickens. I liked that poem when I saw it on Facebook, and I was like, wondered where it was from, because yeah, most of us hear of Charles Dickens. It's either Christmas Carol, Tale of Two Cities, things like that. So quick Google search led me to this poem and to the larger work as a whole. And it kind of got me reading more Dickens as far as his poetry, and I really started to like it. So just thought I'd share that today.
You know, I never knew that Dickens wrote poetry, and I know everything. So it's kind of neat. I have to check that out.
And that's Lucy's song?
It's called Lucy's Song, and it's part of the libretto of the opera. And I think there's more than one Lucy song, along with some of the other pieces. It's like Lord Norton's song and things like that. I think they have it's it's just like a line item in the
Is it an opera, operetta?
comic opera.
Comic opera.
Yeah, and he didn't do the music; he just did the libretto for it. So,
Cool.
but never knew it existed. So it was like, oh, I'm learning something new, and I liked that.
I never heard of it.
Yeah. All right. So from there, we're going to turn it over to Phil to share one of his poems on the podcast.
Yeah, this poem is a acrostic poem, and that's like the first letter of each line spells out a word or phrase vertically that acts as the theme or message of the poem. When I wrote this back in 1975, I had no idea what acrostic poem was. I just thought that would be cool. And it's called, let me read it. Zephyr breezes laughing on warm summer nights as leaves dance gaily, rustling a melody. And in the summer night, cattle lowing from afar, ripples in the warm night air, evening starlights cast shadows of serenity. Phil Bergio. Now, the acrostic part spells out Zor Acres, and that's the name of the place that we live. That's the name I gave it years ago. That's the name of our podcast.
Ah, yes, our Zoraker Studios.
The Zor Acres Studios, right.
That's really
But,
cool.
It was fun to write, and I think we'll have to try another one just because this is so cool
In the acrostic form, you mean?
in the acrostic form.
Nice. Yeah, I was reminding Dad that it used to be hanging on the wall here in the living room because he was like, I should hang this up. And I was like, pretty sure it used to be on the
It
wall.
was. Now I remember over there by Mom's picture.
You just find a word and what
Right.
word you liked and just
What you write down, you write it down vertically, and then you start writing your poem and use the that letter as the first letter of this sentence or the
that's
first
really
line.
pretty cool.
The lines, yeah.
Yeah.
I am not anywhere related. I'm not anywhere close to being remotely like you guys are with poetry. That everybody that I've listened to on the podcast, it's been fantastic listening to this. And I told Matt that my first poem, and probably let's see, I've been out of high school for over 35 years. So my first time trying to write a poem again was after listening to the first two episodes of your podcast.
Nice.
It was really fun.
Yeah, I mean, we still are very much on the amateur level, and that's okay. You could be on any level to be on this podcast. And I think it's great that it helped inspire you to write a poem. So we look forward to hearing that in a little bit. Yeah, it's funny. I was trying to decide which poem I would read on this podcast today, and I couldn't figure out which one I wanted to share. And when I saw that my dad was doing his acrostic of Zor Akers, I was like, well, I'll share my Zor Akers poem. I've got a whole collection of Zor Akers poems from growing up and just different aspects of living here on the farm. And so this one kind of started it all. So this one's a sonnet. It's written in the sonnet form. Zor Akers. Memories of my childhood on the farm come flooding back to me as I recall those days of country living in the fall, where kids were kids away from any harm, playing outside all day with no alarm. Croquet, soccer, baseball, and bocce ball, cookouts and picnics and fires to enthrall. A peaceful place, alive with country charm. I say Zor Acres is the place to be, country living in the land of the free, where gardens and fruit trees blossom their spoils, where family and friends may forget their toils. It's a place where wildlife is free to roam, and it's a place I'll always call my home. Matthew Bergio. So that was my Zor Acres poem. I thought I'd share that as part of my collection. I believe on a previous episode I shared that an animal sanctuary, which was another part of my Zor Acres collection. So,
And as I wipe a tear from my eye, that was good, man.
well,
That's
thank
really
you.
cool, man.
Yeah, I've written a few sonnets over the years. I have a number of them that are written to specific girls that I was courting or in relationships with at various times in my life. But I also have a couple of what I refer to as general sonnets, and this was one of my early ones.
Ready to share, Brett?
I am. Whenever you guys are.
Yeah, Brett, welcome to You're the Poet. Show us what you've got.
Well, I got a little background on this. It was written after listening to your all's podcast, and it was right around Mother's Day. It was May 16th when I wrote it, and ironically, I wrote it in the parking lot of a Meijer out in Alexandria.
Nice.
After I was driving, just listening to your podcast after I dropped my sons off to school, and I'm like, okay, I have to stop and I have to write something right now. I don't know why I did it, but it's called The Flower. Whereas the flower grows, the beauty it knows not. From a simple seed placed in the dirt to a wondrous beauty that's filled the earth. A simple season that ends in time. I am so glad to call you mine. My love for you will never decay as we go along our way. As time goes by and our season ends, but know this, my love, you're my best friend. Brett Elridge.
Very nice. I always love it when inspiration hits you and you got to stop everything you're doing and write it down. I think that's great.
Yeah, that was for my wife on Mother's Day. You know, she was she's my best friend.
That's how it should be.
Kind of reminds me of a poem my dad wrote that maybe he'll share on here someday, but remind me of my mother. But thank you for sharing. Is there anything you'd like to say or contribute or?
Well, I mean, you know, you guys have inspired me to open up a different part of the arts for me. You know, I've been a musician forever. Being dyslexic, English is not always, even though it's my native language, it's sometimes it comes hard, you know, being able to express myself that way it kind of released some, I don't know, pent up emotions, as it were.
That's good to hear.
Well, you can always come back with another poem, another time.
I will do that. And I've been starting a little bit here and there. And, when something hits me, I'll write something down and I'll try to come back to it. It just, it's been a lot of fun and it's been very freeing to do this.
I started writing a poem driving back from Decatur, Illinois, and I didn't put it on the paper yet, but still in my head, still at work. So that might be my next poem that I read.
Yeah, I'm one of the reasons I started this podcast, asked my dad to join me, was hopefully to inspire me to start writing again too. So I'm glad it's helping people get inspired to write poetry. Like I said, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, I mean, I went to Amazon and just started looking for, simple poetry books. I always listen to books on tape or, on Audible now, I guess is what it is. And it's easier for me because I love stories, I love the written word, I love poetry, and you guys have just refanned the flames to that.
Makes me feel good to hear that.
Yeah, that's great. All right, Brett. Well, thank you. I guess we'll move on from here. I've got a little feedback to read from previous episodes. This feedback comes from Mariah S. She commented a little bit on the third episode to say, I have to say, your dad has the warmest dad voice. I liked his poem about the cat, and when he says, what can I say? He's the cat whisperer. I enjoyed Mars's poem, and I liked her take on cliche. I think we all love a good cliche. It's what makes some of the most popular lines in movies and poetry and catchphrases. And even though it was a professor telling her to scratch it, she said no. She made her poetry hers, and that's what it's all about. Then on the fourth episode, she left some comments. I enjoyed that the most yet, and your longest show. Mark's second one was funny. I enjoyed his storytelling style. Always captured by yours. It just feels like you're watching spring arrive from afar. My word for Phil is jolly. He adds a lightheartedness you're lucky to have around. So, so thank you, Mariah, for sharing your feedback there.
Yeah, thanks, Mariah.
And thank you for listening to the show.
Jolly.
Hey,
It's better. That's a good word. Jolly's a good word.
nothing wrong with some lightheartedness.
Nope.
All right. So thank you for joining us on this episode of You're the Poet. Please check out our website at you'rethepoet.com. Find us on Facebook. Shoot us an email at host@you'rethepoet.com. And be sure to subscribe to the podcast and provide some feedback for us. We're always looking forward to hearing from our listeners, and we're still looking for guests. So if there's anybody you know that'd like to be on the show, send them our way. So again, until next time, thank you, Phil.
Welcome.
Brett, thank you for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
Nice meeting you, Brett.
Nice to meet you too, Phil.
All right. Thank you, guys. Take care.